you have to have a huge support system, and that's how you do it all. You can't do everything, so you have to figure out what you can do, and then everything else gets delegated to somebody else.
Greetings, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Orthopreneurs Podcast. Today, coming straight to us from, I'll let you guys guess where she's coming from, Dr. Shira Tor. Welcome, Shira.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
My absolute pleasure. It's always nice. You know, one of the nice parts about my side of the microphone here is that I get the opportunity to interview and chat and dive deep with so many people. And it's especially nice when I get to do it with somebody who I care about, who I respect, who I'm friends with.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you and I have had a chance to, like, I call you my friend, Shira, because we've like hung out like 4 times ever. But comparatively speaking, that's more than most, but we've had a chance to have some good conversations. And I want to dive into a little bit about our first time we met later on, but welcome. It's not parts unknown to me. If you want to let everybody know, where do you practice and live?
So I practice and live in Cleveland, Ohio. I have 2 practices, actually, one on the east side in Beechwood, Ohio, and one on the west side in Middleburg Heights. And I grew up here.
Side.
Yeah, although I'm an east sider, so in Cleveland, that's, you know, we do tend to stay on our sides, but.
Yeah, you know, you don't let the east side and west side, you don't want to have them cross.
No.
So as I always like to start, if you can take a little bit of time and just as little or much detail as you want, just tell everybody a little bit about how you ended up to where you are now, because this is an Ohio gal who ended up going from Ohio to Arizona to New York, back to Ohio. And I know we're going to really get into that a great deal, but if you want to take, you know, just a few seconds and go through it with everybody, I know they'd love to hear a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so I went to college at Miami of Ohio, the best college in the whole wide world, wouldn't have gone anywhere else. And from there, I ended up at A.T. Still University, and it was new and different. And I was their 4th graduating class. And when I got the interview, it was like the middle of winter here in Ohio. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to go to Arizona. My parents were like, what are you doing? Like, I was accepted at Case Western here locally, and they were so excited to have me home. So I flew out, I got an acceptance, and I was like, I'm going there, because I knew I would end up back here in Cleveland. So I went there, and then I actually did a GPR at the University of Arizona. And then I did my ortho in Philadelphia at Einstein Medical Center.
That's right. I was thinking Einstein Medical School, which is New York, right?
Yes, yeah.
Einstein is in Philly. And so did you practice dentistry at all after GPR? Did you GPR straight into ortho?
GPR straight into ortho. Craniofacial stuff has always been an interest of mine. And so one of my mentors in dental school was like, if this is truly what you want to do, you have to become very comfortable with any patient that walks into your door. And so she suggested that I do a GPR. And that was probably the best advice I was ever given, because I went into the GPR knowing I wanted to go into ortho. And it gave me a whole nother perspective. And, you know, I told them eventually, I didn't tell them right away that I wanted to do that. And it was great. I loved it. The experience was like no other. And my only regret is not doing 2 years of a GPR.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of discussion to be had about that, right? Because, you know, something I've been giving a lot of thought to in the last 6 months, really like specific thought, because my daughter is now 22. She's out of college. She's living in New York at her first kind of real job, right? Yeah. And my twins are going to college. So everybody's kind of out of the house soon. So I've been giving a lot of thought about, okay, as a parent, my next stage is no longer the nurturer, like, you know, at home and protecting. And I'm always going to protect my kids. But now it's much more of like life advice, right? Because now it's, and one of the things I've really been focused a lot on is the need to let people have more time, right? Like one of the conversations, one of my mentors, Gary Vaynerchuk, who is an acquired taste for some, one of the things he's talked a lot about, and it's true, is we're going to live, like me, I'm like 600 years old already.
I was actually shocked when I found out how old you were.
I know, don't tell anybody. Glenn's 83? But the truth is, if we take someone like yourself or your cohort, if you will, right, you're going to probably live comfortably into your late 80s, early 90s or longer, comfortably. Like not like my grandparents when they were 65 looked like they were 110. Um, and so the question becomes, how many careers will we have in our lifetime? Like, I honestly believe that people who come out of ortho residency today are not going to be orthodontists for 50, 60, 70 years. I don't think, and I know I sound like an old man, I don't think your generation is wired to do, and you're a millennial, right?
Yeah, I'm on the older end of millennials, but yes, yeah.
Well, no, you're not on the older end of millennials. No.
I was born in '84, so
Okay. So whatever. You're a millennial. And I don't think millennials are wired to work the same job for 50 years. I just don't see it happening. I think the overwhelming majority, you're the Gen Y, I think it was. You're the first generation, and this comes from reading all the books and studies. You're the first generation to ever come into the workplace with the expectation that the job you take is not the one you're going to keep the rest of your life. Not necessarily professionals, but millennials were the first to come in and not expect to work and get a retirement and get a gold watch. Like the idea I'm going to work at the same job for 40 years, that's insanity. And I've been giving a lot of thought to the fact that I don't want to put pressure on my kids to like, go find yourself right now. Like you're not going to live at home and I'm not supporting you, but kick around, enjoy life for the first 3, 4, 5, 7 years of your adult life, because you're never going to get back there again. And you're going to live a long enough and fulfilling enough life that if you want to do 2 years of GPR or 3 years of GPR coming back, right? Like that's one of the big pieces of advice I'd give any young doctor out there right now is exactly what you said, is you're in no rush. Yeah, you got student loans, but you're going to be fine. Like, I don't know about you. Do you ever worry about student loans?
I was very, very blessed that my parents supported me throughout my academics. So
lucky you.
Yes.
No, but my point is most orthodontists, it doesn't become a part of their life where they're going to lose their house or their practice.
Yeah.
You know, just like you said, if you have that second year GPR and it makes sense, do it. You know, if you're going to take time and see the world after college before you start dental school, do it. You know, I think you're going to see a lot more of that in the coming several decades.
Yeah.
Like my son is going to go away for a year before he starts college just to mature. He's not ready for college. So, so you did your GPR, you ended up at Einstein, after, you know, you did AT still, then GPR, then, Philadelphia. Do you do a lot of, craniofacial, by the way? You mentioned it was something you loved.
Yeah. So not yet. I'm planning on joining the team here at the Cleveland Clinic. And so one of my days, once practice kind of slows down a little bit for me. Right now, I don't work Wednesdays. And so then I would have to pick it up. My kids are a little bit too young for me to not have that day off and be able to be with them. So once they're a little bit older, I'm planning on joining that team.
Well, sure. I know you and I have talked a bit about the challenges. You know, I wouldn't call it challenge, but let's call it the unique perspective of being a mom, a wife, helping your husband who has a very fulfilling career of his own, and being a mom to 3 kids. And so I want to get into that in a little bit, but I want to go back to your story and focus on, you know, how does a gal from Ohio end up becoming an orthodontist? What made you want to become an orthodontist and then go to school? You talked a little bit about why you went to school elsewhere and came back to Ohio.
Yeah.
But what was it that made you want to go into ortho in the first place?
My own journey. I mean, I was that kid who had a large diastema between 8 and 9. I would not talk to people. I was so self-conscious. When I laughed, I would cover my mouth. And I, to this day, can see my friends making fun of me when I was laughing because I would always go like this because I was so embarrassed by my smile. And I begged my mom to take me to the orthodontist, begged her. My older brothers did not want and were not interested in orthodontics. So I was the first in the house to like think about doing this.
Right.
And so she took me, and from day one, and she picked my orthodontist. I always tell her, thank you so much, because I wanted to go to somebody else. I thought that that person's staff was a lot of fun. And then my mom, who's like the best judge in character ever, she was like, no, we're going to this one. And so she picked who we were going to, and he changed my life. Like the minute he put braces on me, I was all in. I was that kid who was watching the whole time. Like I would ask all the questions. I was always there. I was so excited to come. I still wasn't the best rubber band wearer, but nobody is. But he's my partner today. I grew up like always telling him, I'm going to come back to Cleveland and be your partner. I want to do what you do. And so I always stayed connected to him throughout my whole journey. Every time I would be home, I would come and visit the office. It would drive the assistants crazy because, like, of course, his like ego that day was like, yeah, Shira's here today. So, but we've always stayed in touch, and it's this beautiful journey. We have the best partnership and transition ever. I think, I came in as an associate and then I bought in, and slowly I'm transitioning to being the senior partner, and we're a family now. And so it was just my journey. And that's why I wanted to do for other people what he did for me.
So you came back to where you grew up.
Yeah.
Which, I had Alyssa Carter on a little while back, and Alyssa's the same thing in Sherman, Texas. Okay. So last year we had over 500 orthodontists at Orthopreneur Summit, and everyone to a person said it was the best orthodontic meeting they'd ever been to. Now, if you're not signed up, it's going to sell out. So please go to opsummit2022.com right now. Sign up. I promise this will be the best ortho meeting you've ever been to in your life. Or you let me know, and I will pay to send you back to the airport in a limousine and pay for your return flight. No questions asked. I've offered that a ton. Nobody's ever taken me up on it. You know why? Because it's going to be the best ortho meeting you've ever been to. opsummit2022.com. Hope to see you there. Everybody on the planet is like, oh my God, it must be awesome to go back to where you grew up because you know everybody and your practice is going to grow so quickly. Yeah. And I'm sure there's some of that. But as I tell people, I once practiced where I lived. And let me tell you, going out to dinner on a Saturday night at a local restaurant was a nightmare because if we had a table in the back, it was great seeing people, but it took us 20 minutes to get to the back table. But, oh, hi, how are you? How are you? Oh, how are you? And my wife, she'd get a little tired of it. Do you ever find any of that?
So it's pretty big here, but yes, it's hard because, the people that you grew up with, now they're coming and they're like, I'm supposed to trust you with my kids now. I get some of that. And it's like the awkwardness of like, they know you. And so they're expecting a certain discount. And I'm like, we just went to high school together. Like we weren't friends, so, but no, I actually love being back here. I love knowing everybody. And I love the story that we had and being able to practice with Ira because he's my mentor and has taught me so much. Yeah. So I love it. I really do. I wouldn't have changed it.
So just because you touched on it, when someone says, hey, they expect a discount, how do you handle that? Because I have my way. I'm curious to hear what you say.
I always just say, oh, my TC, her name is Chris.
Oh, you passed the buck.
Go over all the financials with you.
Over all of it.
So
I know people
to actually be the one who talks.
Hey,
but then she just come back to me and says, hey, they want a discount because they know you. And I'm like,
would you ever do that? Like, I would never, ever have gone into someone's office. Just the fact that I trust them was enough. So I sort of channel that the other direction, which is, nobody ever asks me for a discount, but I just look at them in the eye if they're a friend or a family member, unless I know they're on hard times, and then I just want to help them, right? But if it's someone who's like, hey, I know I just look them in the eye and I'll just be like, hey, by the way, I really appreciate you coming here. I value the relationship so much that you trust me. And I promise more than anything, you're going to get even more care and attention than I would give anybody else, which is already such a high level. Like I'm going to pay it forward for you by treating you with more care than you can imagine, as opposed to giving you a discount, But I know people who pump and dump. That's a term that's been used by people, like they pump the price up and then give a 20% discount. That's not my style.
Yeah.
So talk about what makes your partnership so great. Because I think Doug and I, honestly, I think we, I take exception to your comment.
We might rival you guys. We might rival you. Well, but our partnership is a little different in that.
Very different.
I bought into his practice, right? He started the practice 35 years ago. He built it up to what it was. And then I come in as the associate and then I buy in. And the idea was always that I was going to buy in. But
those, just interrupting for a second, those are the nightmares. Those are like when you go on Orthopreneur's Facebook group or any place else you are and you hear these conversations, it is invariably, I would say 9 out of 10 times, that scenario that you just described turns out to be a nightmare. Like you read the person posting, hey, I'm posting anonymously because I'm in a practice and they're selling. Like there's so much ego there most of the time. There's so much self-worth there so much of the time. So much, this was my baby and you're going to pay accordingly for it. What made your transition be different than all those other things we read about?
I think it was Ira. He had no ego. He left everything at the door. And from day one, he was the most supportive person. Like, I wanted to do TADs, and that was something he didn't do. And he's like, let me buy you whatever TAD kit you want. And we weren't really doing a lot of Invisalign. I was like, hey, I think we should do more Invisalign. He's like, I'll send you to whatever courses you want to go to. He just literally from day one let me do whatever I wanted to do, as if I had already bought into the practice. And he just supported me as if he was my father, right? And so I think our relationship was always special because of that. We became friends and we were always equals. He never looked down on me. And I attribute it to him, right? He just checked his ego at the door, like from day one, and just was like, fly, whatever you want to do. I will support you. Let's see what happens.
That's beautiful. So, a couple of questions about that. Did the practice need some TLC when you came in, or was it already still booming? And if so, did it require you being leaned on a little bit more, being the younger, newer, quote unquote, more tech savvy, more social media savvy individual?
Yeah, I think he kind of was at the point where he was plateaued because he could only do what he could do as one doctor. He was working as much as he wanted to be working at that point. His kids had all graduated, were in college at that point. So he was kind of steady. He wasn't looking to grow. And then I come in and, you know, I wanted to grow the practice. I wanted it to be, yeah. I mean, you read on these blogs and I'm like, well, we could do that. Why? We can do that for sure, you know? And so from day one, I went and I started study groups and I went and I met everybody, and he took me around and introduced me to everybody he knew. And I just was that person who just always said yes to going things and to, you know, whatever study groups I could be a part of that included me. I was like, yes, I'm going to do it. And so it just, I think we look at things very differently, right? Like I do all the social media stuff, which was not present there. I looked at his website and I was like, this is horrendous.
1987.
Yeah. So we immediately got a new website from day one. He already had an iTero, so he was up to speed on a lot of things. But it was just some of the other stuff that just to update the practice. I do think that I did bring that into the practice.
So when you came into his practice, had you been practicing elsewhere beforehand, or did you come straight out of school into his practice?
Straight out of residency. Yeah. Einstein was 3 years. I sat and I took my boards and I was ready to go.
So when you came in, was it, and I think this is useful because I ask this of almost everybody who comes on the podcast, who's a partner or an associate, was it, okay, here's how we treat in this office. These are the brackets we use. This is the clinical system. This is when we bend wire. This is when we reposition. You know, just follow the assistants. This is what we do. Yeah. Or was it more of a, I was taught to reposition in school, but you bend a lot of wire and I'm going to reposition. How did that happen when you came in, and what advice would you give people about that?
We kind of just meshed our two ways of doing things. I mean, of course, we practiced a little bit differently because wherever you go to school, that's the way you practice. But somebody once told me that if you're practicing the same way today as you did 5 years ago, you're already out of date. Right. So I remember, I always think about that, which is why I love to go to CE. And I dragged him to all the CE and I learned everything I could from him because I'm like, he clearly knows much more than I do. And so I definitely learned a significant amount from him and how he did things. And so slowly we started just to our brains. Now, if you ask us, we're the same. Our treatment planning is the exact same. You know, all of our wire sequences are the exact same. There's no difference between the two of us.
And what you did is brilliant, because I tell people just from experience, right? From having done something for 30 years, it's super important that when you get out of school, you know nothing. Right. You know nothing. You know enough to be legally responsible to not kill somebody in your office, basically. Yeah. But I think you have to take massive amounts of CE. I was just listening to a great podcast that I shared in Entrepreneurs from Rich Roll, who's an ultra marathoner, vegan, genius dude. I think he swam at Stanford. And he had Arthur C. Brooks on his podcast, who is, again, accolades I could go on about. And he talks about the difference between fluid intelligence and crystalline intelligence and crystallized intelligence. And you're going to have fluid intelligence until about your late 30s, 40-ish at the most. That's when you're going to do your maximum creativity, your maximum productivity. That's when you're going to grow the most, and you're going to find it more difficult to be able to achieve the same result creativity-wise after late 30s, early 40s. And anybody out there can argue as much as they want. This is known. They've studied this. And then you move into more crystallized intelligence, which is much more combining wisdom of what other people have done and teaching and stuff like that, which is why orthopreneurs was such a perfect fit for me when I was 49. When I started, it was like, I didn't realize it at the time, but that's exactly the stage of life you're moving into, which is less creating of your own. Like, I'm not the guy who's going to go online all the time and show you, look at this new technique I just came up with. Look at it. Right. But my job is to try to collate what everybody else is doing and bring wisdom to it. And so it's so important when you get out of school and you're in your late 20s or early 30s to go kill it with learning as much as you can, to start testing it and trying it and working with it. And all too often, associates will come into a practice and be like, oh, I don't need CE. I'm going to learn what I need from the boss, if you will. And I think you see it as a recipe for disaster. So kudos to you.
Well, kudos to Ira, really, because he's the one who was just like, yeah, go, whatever you want to learn, let's do it. And he came with me too, to everything. Like, he comes with me to everything. It's so cool.
It's awesome. Yeah. So let's go back to it now. You're the mom, you're the wife, you're the associate, future partner, right? Or partner. One of the things that, I see so much online, is, hashtag mom life, right? Or hashtag mom guilt. Or all the things that I'll be told repeatedly, you'll never understand. You'll just never understand, right? Like I seek to understand, but I'm repeat. Like, the first thing I'm told is you'll never understand, and I don't think that's necessarily true. I think we all have our own burdens that we face, right? They're different, right? I always tell people that I'm the son of a woman who, with MS, went back to school to become a lawyer in the late 70s with two young kids when I was 10. Because we needed it to make ends meet. She went back to school. I would often come home to school. I completely forgot. I'd have to break into my own home if I didn't have a key because there was nobody home. And she was a hero. She still is alive, and she's a hero to me. And she was at a time when sexual harassment was rampant. Doll, hey doll, a smack on the butt, or women couldn't reach a certain level, and she got to that level at a time when they couldn't. So people say, well, you'll never understand. I'm like, I think I kind of do understand when my mom had to miss her finals in law school because she had to take me to the hospital, right? When I banged my head. Like, so I've seen it from that perspective, and I have huge respect for women who do what you do. How do you balance the whole 3 kids? I'm not feeling good. I want mommy. And at the same time, I've got a CE course and I've got a practice to run. Oh, and that team member called in sick, and I got to do the shopping. And as your words, not mine, I got to dote on my husband, right? Because you want to help, you love your husband who's an attorney, and you want to help take care of him. Instead of the how, because that's hard to answer, what advice would you give to that 23, 24-year-old woman who's in dental school, who wants to become an orthodontist, who's not married yet, doesn't have kids yet, but plans on that path? What advice would you give them to hold it all together?
Oh, it's your support system, 100%. How I do it is I have a huge support system that I rely on. I can't do everything. My parents live 5 minutes away from me. My mom happens to be a pediatrician. So that's awesome when the kids are sick.
I
need your help.
That is a support system right there.
And I think and my parents have always said to me, you have to be a professional. You cannot rely on anybody except for yourself. And so growing up, I knew that I had to figure out a career that I could support myself in. Whatever it was, they didn't care. They just said, you're going to have to get a career that can support you and makes you happy, of course. If that's the same, even better. Right. And so I have my parents. We had nannies. I now have an au pair. My mother-in-law comes in and is very helpful as well. And so I just have a huge support system, and I know when I need to delegate certain things. And so when my kids are sick, they take priority. And again, this is why I have the most amazing partner, especially when I was an associate, if I called him and I was like, my kid is sick, he's like, stay home. I got the clinic. Don't worry. It's fine. Yeah. So, I mean, slowly we've had to kind of change that as, I've taken on more clinical time. But, now my parents don't work as much. And so they're able to stay home when the kids are sick. And I come home during lunch because I live really close.
That's awesome.
So it's just, you have to have a huge support system, and that's how you do it all. You can't do everything. So you have to figure out what you can do, and then everything else gets delegated to somebody else.
I know. It's hard. It's hard when you don't have a support system, right? And so like when you hire that really amazing assistant who comes into your office for a job, and I don't ask about kids, but they'll often volunteer.
Yeah.
They'll say, oh yeah, I have 3 kids. Oh, how old? Oh, a 9-month-old, a 2-year-old, and a 4-year-old. I'm like, oh, that's fantastic. And, I was taught to ask the question, is there anything that you could think of that would keep you from being here on a regular basis? Like, because you can't ask about kids. You can't ask about, and they'll almost always go, oh, no, my kids. And, I've got my parents live nearby. Or it's when they say they have 3 kids, like, well, they don't get sick that often. I'm like, oh, no, I know it's coming down the road here. I can see this one coming. And of course, you're lucky to have a parent who's a pediatrician, because like, Mom and Dad, if you're listening out there, I love you both. But like, we had to teach my parents what kids can't eat and die. Right? Like, Mom, you got to cut the hot dogs up. You can't just it's truly like you're the opposite situation. Like, I was scared of my children being left alone.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. I do. You're a friend. You're somebody I respect. You're somebody who I view as having a very reasonable and rational, and not irrational, and rational approach towards life. So I want to ask you a question here, because it's a delicate question that I can't ever put in writing, because if I do, it gets misunderstood.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, and I got chastised for this online, because I'll never understand mom guilt. I'll never understand mom guilt. And, I've talked to my mom, I've spoken to other women I really respect about it. And it's part of the whole, because you hear it everywhere now, right? If you're on Instagram, TikTok, mom guilt, mom guilt, mom guilt. You hear it all the time. Is a lot of mom guilt also a function of women finally being able to get what they want? Like for many, 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 many decades, women wanted to be able to do X, Y, Z, A, B, C. And now, thankfully, we live in a world where there's hopefully, for most of the people we know, there's no limits for my daughters, for your daughters, about what they're going to become in life. But is some of the mom guilt just like, it is impossible to have everything. Like you have the practice you finally want, right? You have the social life you want. You've got the academic life you want. It's hard, if that's on one spectrum, something else has to give somewhere. And you understand where I'm coming from, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely, you can have it all as long as you understand that what having it all actually means is not 100% in every category that you're looking for.
Perfectly stated. That's what I was doing a horrible job of explaining. No, I mean, I was trying to put it in terms, because I'm dancing around the subject. I mean, that's the hardest part. Is even with a friend, if you and I were sitting quietly having a beer, I would just ask you the question outright. But there's many people out there today who are looking to just come at you hard if you say something the wrong way. And so I'm trying to delicately balance it, is that you can't have everything all the time, right? But is it healthy to have the guilt over it, or is it more a function of saying, hey, I made a choice and I'm okay with it, as opposed to the mom guilt is real?
I feel like that's such a personal, because the question comes, where is the mom guilt coming from, right? And a lot of times I think we put it on ourselves, and that's where it comes from. Like, I do feel guilty. Mondays are my late days. I'm in the clinic until 6:00, and my daughters are still young, so they go to bed at like 8:00. So on Mondays, I stretch it out a little bit because I want to spend time with them. And I feel guilty that I'm not there, but I also want this amazing practice. And I also want certain things. So that's guilt that I put on myself, and I've turned to my mom many times and asked her, like, how did you do it? She was a department head at Rainbows here, which is a huge hospital system. She was head of adolescent medicine. And I asked her, like, how did you deal with it? And she's like, you have to pick and choose your battles, like you prioritize what you want to with your kids. And then everything else, you kind of decide, okay, delegating it to somebody else and it'll be okay. You're still well aware of everything going on. It's not like I just close my eyes and walk away. But
Right.
sometimes I let my husband be the one who goes and picks up the girls when they're sick. When I get that phone call, I call him and I'm like, I really can't leave the clinic. You have to be the one who picks them up this time. And I feel bad that I'm not the one hugging them or, consoling them or giving them their medicine and laying with them and scratching their back. But, it's my guilt is from me. It's not from anybody else, but
It would be the same thing though if you did go home and work and you
yeah,
because of how we are built as drivers,
yeah,
you'd have ortho guilt.
I would. Yeah.
Or practice guilt, whatever raise your hand out there if you've taken off the very, very, very occasional sick day, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a badge of honor in orthodontists, male or female, to say, I had 107 fever and I was coughing up blood.
Yeah. No.
I was coughing up stool. And I still went to work and saw 197 patients in 3 hours,
Yeah.
without assistance. It's like this badge of honor. Like I can be so sick and come to work. And I had a team member who missed a number of days of work. I didn't say anything to them, but it occurred to me they missed more work in 1 month than I missed in 7 years. And why? Because if I'm not at work, I feel guilty.
Yeah.
I know it's different than kids because I got 3 kids of my own. And when I can't be there for them, I wouldn't say I feel guilty. I feel sad. There's a difference, right? Like I know they're being taken care of and I feel sad, but nonetheless, we all feel guilt in certain places. And I think it's going to manifest itself depending upon what you really want to be doing when you're not doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. There's definitely expectations and we all feel it. And as females, like if you're not that caring, nurturing type with your children, people look at you one way, and if you want to be really successful in business, sometimes they look at you another way. So there's still in our society stereotypes that we have to kind of break through, and hopefully one day we will. But to this day, when I go around with Ira on the floors to buy certain products, they still consider me the assistant. They won't look at me.
Really?
I'm the doctor. That's happened several times.
Oh, you see, and so that's the hard part for me, and why sometimes I'm so blind to it is because I am completely the opposite, right? My mother is an attorney. Her sister was head corporate attorney for Caterpillar and Coca-Cola. And my sister works in Manhattan. Like every person in my family, women, you were just raised, women are equal to men. To be honest, quite honestly, they're mostly superior in my family.
We are, but we don't.
No, I'm not even being facetious. I'm being honest, but so for me, I was raised with the idea that men and women are completely equal. You would never say anything disparaging to a woman any more than you'd say anything disparaging to a man. I mean, you just don't do it, period. And so to me, when I hear these stories, it's like stories of racism, right? I respect that it exists. I fight it at every opportunity. I could never imagine treating a human being that way. And so it's hard to understand it, right? And so I do agree with you, though. The stereotypes socially have to change. And I do see a lot of it when I speak to women who I respect and who I'm friends with who say that if you don't nurture and care for your children one way, some people are going to look at you a certain way. And it's disgusting. It needs to change.
Agreed.
But thank you for explaining it. I appreciate it. So let's finish up talking about grilled cheese. I want to talk about grilled cheese because I love
I'm a badge of honor.
I love a good grilled cheese story as much as the next person, as well as a good sandwich.
Yeah.
But if I'm not mistaken, I believe that you have a good grilled cheese story to tell.
I do. Yeah.
Let's hear about it.
So I went to Miami of Ohio for undergrad, and it was
the greatest college.
The greatest college there is. Everybody should go there. My kids will go there. So every Tuesday or Thursday, whatever it was, the dining halls had grilled cheese. And so my roommate, Amanda, and I loved the grilled cheese sandwiches. We would always go. We would always meet. There would be a big group of us. And somehow it became very competitive between her and I, how many of these grilled cheese sandwiches we would eat.
Oh, this is getting good. There's going to be an Orthopreneur Summit grilled cheese eating contest this year.
I'm in.
I don't think I'm not going to do it.
I don't know if I could do what I used to do back in the day, but
I'm taking you down, Shira.
Well, this was not just grilled cheese. There was tomato soup involved as well, just so you know.
Right
we did it right.
I love this.
So we would always say I had 5 grilled cheese sandwiches today. How many did you? And it just became a thing to where one of our friends was like, that's it. for having an official competition. So
did you say you had 5 grilled? It just registered. You ate 5 grilled cheese sandwiches for lunch?
So when we had the actual competition, I had 9 and she had 8.
Oh my God. And for those of you who don't know Shira, this is not a 6'6". No, she's pretty petite. I can't, you said 9, like these are legit grilled cheese sandwiches, and where did the soup come in?
Yeah, I only had 1 bowl of soup, but
I was like 9 bowls of soup.
Yeah, the dining hall made them all. Like we would eat them, and then our friend would go back in line and get more. And
that's hysterical. And $700 later.
It was all included. It's like, you get that meal package. That's all included. It's fine.
I'm well aware of that as someone who pays for college education. So sometime when you and I are hanging out, I will tell you my hot dog eating contest story.
Okay.
I'll keep the listeners hanging on that one. But let's just say it was far more than 9. Okay.
Well, so, I don't know. I think with grilled cheese, though, I would still win. So
I think, you know what? There's only one way to know. September 8th through 10th in Austin. Don't think I totally want to do this now. I think we should do a grilled cheese eating contest. But you have to have a bowl of soup with every sandwich. So I think that's the way we'll go with this one.
That would definitely slow me down. I mean, the liquids obviously take up a lot, So
whoever wondered that they tune into the Orthodontic podcast and listen how liquid fills up the grilled cheese sandwich so you can't eat as much.
The things you learn, it's fine.
Well, as I said when we started, you're one of my favorite people, Shira. I really love spending time with you. I'm glad you do get out of the house and go to classes so I can see you. Yes. I love having you in RD so we can hang out at events and things like that. And just thank you for being here today. Really appreciate you. And
thanks for having me. This was fun.
Well, at some point there'll be a part 2 and we can talk more about the contest to come.
Sounds good. Anytime.
Have a wonderful day. Appreciate you so much. And thank you again.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.